Hi, this is my video review for the 13th Age role-playing game. The 13th Age RPG could be considered a modification or maybe even an evolution of the good old Dungeons and Dragons RPG. As many of you know, the Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game has been through many changes throughout the years, and some of those changes were very radical and controversial during its 3.0, 3.5, and 4.0 editions. The 3.0 and 3.5 editions handle things a bit more crunchy. It had more crunch in the way the player handled skills and feats, powers, the ways you could explore a dungeon and move around the battlefield. But some players said it was too crunchy for its own good, and sometimes the role-playing aspect got sacrificed in favor of a rules precise mindset. And the 4.0 edition was a bit more streamlined, and sometimes it felt like a board game, and even more times felt like a MMORPG. So a lot of players said that the role-playing aspect was sacrificed too in that regard. And the 13th Age RPG is a lot more focused on storytelling and creating great adventures, but it also maintains a nice balance handling the rules and the different qualities and stats of the characters. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let me talk about the quality of the PDF. The PDF is excellent. It has a virtual table of content. It's very easy to navigate through the entire book, and the book is just really easy to read. It's easy on the eyes, the illustrations, and the way they teach you the game is excellent overall. It's one of those books where you start reading and you're getting all excited to play your first game of this particular system. And I think they did a pretty good job on building a book that doesn't feel too heavy or too dry. It has that tongue-in-cheek feeling where the designers Robert Heinzu and Jonathan Tweet are right there beside you talking about the game and give you tips and advice. In the book's introduction, they tell you that they expect players to be a bit familiar with the Dungeons and Dragons system, or the versions I talked about, the 3.0, 3.5, 4.0. But to tell you the truth, this is one of those books that is too modest for its own good, because all the information in this PDF tells you how to play in a very excellent, very comprehensive way. I think a beginner could pretty easily grasp this book and absorb the information therein and start his or her own campaign with no difficulty at all. Maybe checking forums or the website will be helpful, but this book is so well written, and it tells you the rules in a very clear way that even a beginner can understand how to play a role-playing game. The special thing about the 13th Age, and maybe something that is key to understanding the whole system, are the icons. Icons are archetypical forms or demigods that we have seen in many different games, but here they put a lot more emphasis on what they represent, on the ways they move the entire campaign world, and how entire campaigns and not just one-shot adventures can be focused on them. We have the Archmage, of course, a powerful wizard that has almost entire control over the fabric of reality, but sometimes he gets a bit too ambitious, and it's sort of like a wild card amongst the icons. There are also the Crusader or the Great Gold Worm that represent justice, but in two different ways. The Crusader is a bit more like severe, violent, but just really forceful in his approach to fight what he considers evil. And the Great Gold Worm is a bit more righteous and standing for gold, light, and everything you could pretty much associate with a paladin type character. And you have other archetypes or other icons like the Lich King, which the Lich King reminds me a bit of Vecna. And you have the Orc Lord, the Priestess, the Prince of Shadows, and all of them are central to the stories you can tell with this RPG, because the characters are directly related to them in a negative or positive way, and this influences the adventures and maybe even directly the plot line, the way it achieves new character and story developments through the course of the campaign. You also have rules for the characters, of course. The characters are pretty easy to understand. It's your standard generate a character by choosing race, class, generating your stats. But the important thing is that the race and the class and the stats don't dictate or try to force you into playing a specific kind of character. You can pretty much customize everything about your character so he feels like a very unique personality in this world. And this is one of the things that achieves great balance in this game. Even though you have all these powerful icons that look like demigods, like power players that are beyond the player's grasp in terms of power and knowledge, the players themselves, the player characters, feel very unique because you need to create a unique feature for your character, or like a special quality. For example, let's say you want to play as a dwarf fighter. You could say that dwarf fighter is actually a unicorn that was transformed into a dwarf by the archmage on a whim, or maybe your half-elf rogue is the lost son of an emperor, or maybe even the lost son of the Prince of Shadows. And in that way, each character feels like a living legend on its own. Even though every character has a humble beginning, you feel like you're controlling a heroic main character in this overall grand scheme of things. And of course, even when you choose a class and a race, that race has a special quality or unique talent, or more like a quality, so the player can have some advantage in certain situations. And the classes also have a lot of differences between them to make them feel unique. For example, let's start with each of the classes so we can see how they relate to each other. First, we have the Barbarian. Of course, you all know the Barbarian with his savage rage and his savage style of fighting, with lightly armored but very powerful in terms of taking damage and keep on fighting and dealing damage. But thanks to the customization in this game, you can create different kinds of barbarians. For example, let's say two players want to create a barbarian. One player could specialize in dealing damage, and the other could specialize on receiving it. So you could have a tank type barbarian and a damage dealing barbarian. You also have the bard, and I've heard a lot of people complaining how they don't like bards because they feel too like a support character that is not really good at anything. But the bard in this game has battle cries or war cries that enhance his combat abilities, and you can pretty much handle your bard as a support caster. But if you don't want it like that, you could build him like a combatant or a frontline fighter. And you could also play his songs and his charisma to modify his relation to the icons, because I'll talk about more of this later, but the relationship between a player and the icons is very important. If you have a positive or conflictive or negative relationship with an icon, this will not only influence the entire adventure, it may also have a direct impact on your character and his chances to succeed or survive. Then we have the cleric, and the cleric is also very versatile because by choosing domains, you can have a cleric that specializes in healing, maybe another that is more warlike or offensive, and another one that can manipulate diplomatic relations or maybe even like a friendship and character relationships directly. You also have the fighter, and the fighter is like a master tactician. You can choose all types of maneuvers and talents and tactics to handle each combat situation differently according to the needs of the situation. And you also have the paladin, who is a protector but could also play as a somewhat full-time caster or healer if needed. but the paladin in this game feels very excellent as a sort of mid shield or protector. So I recommend building it that way. But as I told you, this game gives you a lot of freedom to create the character you really want. You also have the ranger, and the ranger in this game is awesome. You can, if you want, you can handle him with an animal companion, or just handle him as a stealthy scout, moving around with his two swords in the dual wielding style we all love. And we have the rogue, and the rogue here is not just some would say a skill monkey. No, the rogue in this game could be a frontline combatant as well, but he could also be a sort of ambusher or move stealthily by using all those interesting things that make him sneaky and resourceful. The sorcerer is a sort of like a gamble. He's a caster that can gamble everything in one single spell and see if he can save the entire group from a very powerful foe. So it's a character very suited for those players that like a wild card and not entirely sure of what they're going to get next. They're willing to take the risk. And the wizard is a very useful caster because thanks to his utility spells, you can have a spell ready for almost any type of situation, even if it's exploration or maybe combat. The wizard can throw some really powerful and devastating spells, but I feel he really shines when it's about having the perfect spell for any type of situation. And of course, you have these different talents and skills for each class, and you can build your character in that way, so it feels unique. And you start off with the gear that you want for your player. This game is very streamlined in the way that it gives the players what they want or what they need for their characters. You don't have to feel like constrained or limited by the gold you start with. If you want your barbarian to start with a huge double-handed axe and maybe a shield and some leather armor, sure, yeah, why not? You can start with that and throw in a dagger as well. So you can work this with your game master, so you can create your character with the starting gear most appropriate for the character concept. And this is something I would like to talk about more. The players are also the creators of the setting. In many other RPGs, the game master or dungeon master feels like the one who is creating the entire background for the campaign, but the players, with their input and their ideas, are also constantly shaping the entire world. So if the dungeon master asks you, so what is your character doing in this village? And the player is going to tell you, my player is searching for the long lost sigil of who knows what kingdom that is supposed to be hidden in this village. It was hidden here by a secret cult of dark priests of the evil black dragon. So now the cult of the evil priests for the evil black dragon exists, and the dungeon master or game master has to play with this idea and keep it as a recurrent or central part of the plot, so this player can elaborate and develop in his conflict against this evil cult. So the players are constantly so to speak, pulling the rug under the game master's feet, and he has to improvise with what the players are creating for their characters, for their worlds, because the players have total freedom to create different places, characters as related to their characters and the quests they are undertaking. And of course, the combat rules in this game are very interesting and very fun because they don't feel cumbersome. They feel like they are made to please the players and to ease the job of the game master. So you don't have a grid, and you don't have to move 5-foot spaces throughout the map, checking who's flanking who, and if you can't get there because of the difficult terrain. You could play with these concepts, but in a very loose way. The most important thing is knowing who is engaged with who and who is fighting what, and who is in the back lines and who's in the front lines attacking with what, with a bow or an arrow or a spell. So it's a very streamlined combat, and the best thing of it is the scalable die. There is a die that as long as the battle progresses, it goes up in number. First one, two, three, four, and this acts as a bonus that is given to the player characters, so they fight harder during each round. And this is great because sometimes battles tend to linger too much, or they take too long sometimes, and everybody's like, oh come on, this battle needs to stop, please. But this scalable die ensures that the battle becomes more and more lethal as it progresses. And so other many of the player characters' powers and spells are also constantly dealing damage to the foes. For example, if you attack with your fighter, and even if you miss, you deal damage to the enemy. So this is constantly about speeding up combat and having exciting action, fast-paced situations in which the player characters are always attacking, fighting, blocking, and dealing damage. But of course, the monsters also have to be equipped with very interesting powers and abilities, so they can answer to the character's aggression or offensive. And this book is very complete because it contains a bestiary, a very comprehensive and very extensive bestiary with many classic and beloved enemies from Dungeons and Dragons, all types of demons and skeletons and orcs, etc., etc. So you can start playing right away with all those creatures. And the book also has a lot of advice on how to run the game, of working with icon relationships, because this is the part I talk about more about icons. The icons, the players start with a number of dice to represent their relationship with an icon. If it's a positive relationship, the icon is a powerful ally, maybe a patron, but they must always keep that sense of distance. Like there are some aloof figures of power the players just barely knows because of different things, their feats or what people say about them. But if a player has a conflictive or maybe even a negative relationship with them, the players are in direct or you could say it, an antagonistic relationship with the icons. And because of this, the icons can represent potential threats or the greatest foes that the players will face. But this also gives the player an advantage. For example, let's say that the player is a foe of the Orc Lord. If the Elf Queen is in bad terms with the Orc Lord, she will help the character because they have a common foe. So this relationship with icons creates a lot of interesting situations where of power plays and intrigues, where the player characters are a central part of, even though they are weaker than the icons. They are key pieces in a giant chess game of power. And of course, there are also, to keep things more streamlined, you also have heal ups that the player characters can use after a certain number of battles. Sometimes it becomes too cumbersome, or it slows the game down when you have to go back to the inn and rest. You fight and you go back to town to the inn and rest. But here the characters can heal after a certain number of combats and keep things running, keep things fluid. So a single session of game time feels like you have accomplished a lot. And you also have rules for different magic items and how they are so special that they take a sort of slot on your player character. They call them chakras in this game. And so, for example, if you have a sword, it already takes the chakra space for a sword. You can't have a lot of swords. You should have maybe one or three weapons that your character uses constantly, magic weapons. So they feel unique, and there's a certain bond between the character and the magical weapon. And the tips about running the game also talk about balance and treasure and rituals, because you can also use spells as a form of ritual with maybe a sort of uncertain feeling if they will work or not. But if they work, they will have tremendous results. But if they fail, of course, it's something negative, but it's also something that enhances the story, giving you more plot lines or interesting ways in which the adventure campaign can progresses. For example, let's say you use a ritual to destroy an evil magic item. If the ritual succeeds, you destroy the item, and everybody's happy. But if you fail, maybe the item transforms into a demonic force or a sort of artifact monster that is now obsessed with exacting vengeance upon the player characters that try to destroy him through the ritual. So everything in this game builds around the idea of creating an epic story. Even there are traps here, but even the designers tell you that you shouldn't use traps as a means to kill characters, more like to represent an important hazard. Because who has heard of there aren't many epic heroes who had died because of traps. Oh no, Beowulf, he died because he fell down a 20 feet deep pit. No, these stories of the 13th Age are for epic heroes that can only die at the hands of equally epic enemies. And this game keeps that idea throughout the entire book. It tells you about how to create these interesting stories built not only by the game master but by the player characters too. And the game even gives you an adventure, an introductory adventure called Blood and Lightning. And it's a very cool adventure because it makes first level characters feel like they are already epic because of the themes, this sense of this all important conflict that will decide the course of an entire region. And they even fight a much higher enemy, a higher level enemy than them, because of the certain circumstances. And it's possible for first level characters to defeat the enemy. Well, let me give you my overall advice, my overall thoughts about this book. I think it's an excellent game. I wasn't expecting much of the 13th Age. I thought, oh no, that another Dungeons and Dragons clone. Let's see what they do different this time. But this game, it's pretty amazing in the way they combine storytelling and streamlined rules, giving enough depth for a player to customize his character and to act in battle the way he wants to, but also keeping constantly in mind how the story develops, how his character becomes a figure of legend, how he relates to the different icons. There are so many good things about this game. It's a game easy enough for beginners to understand and learn, and with enough depth and choices for a hardcore RPG player to use at his leisure and to think about the next great feat or spell to use and obtain. So I give this book 2 thumbs up. If I was maybe a weird creature, I will give it 8.8 thumbs up. But this is a great game. I think you should buy it if you played Dungeons and Dragons 3.0, 3.5 or 4.0. Give it a chance because it's going to show you that there is a lot of innovation left for this type of games, that the fantasy genre in RPGs still has a lot of things to explore and a lot of rule mechanics to use without sacrificing the story. Well, thank you for watching my review. If you have any comments, please type them down. I will read them. See you later.